Directors. It is September 16th, 2021. It is 7:34 p.m. Tracy, could we have a roll call, please?
Okay. Director Boyd?
Here.
Director Harvey? Director Harvey?
Jim. Here. There we go.
Director Lohman?
Here.
Director Slater-Carter?
Present.
Director Decker is not present.
Hello, Michelle.
All right. Thank you, Tracy. All right. We've been called to order. We've done the roll call. For President's statement, I'm going to beat the same old drum. Thank you so much for being here. We really appreciate the opportunity to do this work for the community and for the community participation, especially when you come and show up at meetings. And we look forward to your feedback and your comments and your questions and your criticisms. We are in the middle of a drought. It's not a good one. We don't know when it will end. And so as always, even though the district is very well prepared for this, we do encourage wise water use. Let's conserve. We don't know how long this is going to last, and so conserving is a smart way to go. The community has long shown a great propensity for conserving, and I'm just encouraging us to all do what we've done for a long time. All right, do we have oral comments for anything that is not on the agenda tonight? I see Catherine first. I see any other hands?
Okay. Hi, Sid.
Hi. Hang on.
That's fine.
I see Anne, and then I see Carlisle. So let's do it in that order. Catherine, Anne, and then Carlisle.
Okay. Governor Newsom signed SB 10, 9, and 10 today. These bills have been through the legislature off and on for 4 years, and essentially they will eliminate single-family housing in California, single-family zoning. They will allow the division of a legal lot, something that has a certificate of compliance in the single-family area, to be created as small as 1,250 square feet. Because in our community, we have 2,500 square foot lots, and they made no differentiation about the size of a lot that could be subdivided. And on each of those lots that can be subdivided, you can put 2 or more housing units on them. So it's going to leave the water industry in particular scrambling to be able to meet that demand. And more than that, it's going to leave those of us who are retired or with more limited income and in a terrible bind, because we're going to have to pay to expand the water and sewer and other infrastructure, the hospitals, the schools, the roads, and our community is at great risk, as MCC has pointed out. Thank you, Dave Olson and Greg, for fire and access in and out of this community. There are some requirements that public transit be close by, but we'll see how the community interprets that, because we have a bus that goes through Montara twice a day, so that probably qualifies. Anyway, I've been talking about this, and it's devastating for the whole state. Thank you.
All right, let's go to Anne, please.
Thank you so much. I actually had a similar concern. I attended the Board of Supervisors meeting, and I did see that they approved the Coastal Commission's, I guess, standards that they want to see put forth for the ADUs. And they did say that they were going to limit them to 466 for the coast. Now, I don't know how exactly that will be enacted. That's what I heard from the meeting. And actually, if you go to their agenda, there's attachments and you can see what's in there. And that's how I arrived at that number. I was concerned, like Catherine is, about how this will affect homeowners, hookups, improvements to the system, and how the homeowners would be on the hook for it because the renters are not. And if something happens, we run out of water, they leave. We're stuck. You know, as homeowners, you're without water. And with the sewer issues we're already dealing with, and then these major developments, which when it comes to big wave, they're already putting in the office space before the housing, which I found interesting because they said the whole reason they needed Cypress Point housing was because there were jobs and people had to travel to the coast in order to get to their jobs because they couldn't afford housing. So I'm not really sure why now they can build more office space that would create more jobs and more people if there isn't housing. It's sort of contrary, but anyway, that's what they said. And it was also interesting that part of that development is for storage of, they said, was it luxury vehicles? So I found that also interesting. But anyway, I know it's kind of interesting. All the things you find out at the Board of Supervisor meeting. Anyway.
I don't think that was on the use permit.
No, but it's there. That's what
it was going to be on the south parcel, but the county bought the south parcel to pay big waves fees.
So anyway, thank you for filling that in, but I don't know. All I know is that they're putting it in and that's going to be built prior to the housing, which is actually needed, particularly for the adults and their caretakers. I'm actually in support of it because I think it is needed. However, with the ADUs and now Cypress Point, I mean, this is going to be a huge burden on our small community, and the homeowners are on the hook for any cost of improvement. And like I said, if God forbid we run out of water, we have houses with no value and we will have no water, whereas renters can simply move on. So anyway, that's my 2 cents. And I just was concerned about how you can establish fees for these ADUs for hookups. And I really don't know what will happen, but thank you.
Thanks, Ann. Let's go to Carla, please.
Hi, thank you. I just wanted to compliment Clemens on the good work they did along San Lucas this past month with, I guess they were redoing the sewer line in the street. There were just, a couple of snags, but one thing I would say, Clemens, it would be nice if they would knock on our door when they're on our property, because I've been trying to catch them when they're around to let them know about my issue on that area where I slipped and fell. But they haven't come by. But today I just went out to get my mail and there's white marks in the street now. So they must have come by. They didn't, make a courtesy call and ring my doorbell. Anyway, I am curious about this ADU issue. Do we not have established a connection fee for if somebody wants to build an ADU on their property or a 2-unit building, for instance? Doesn't the district already have that?
Well, let me just briefly address this. Yes, we have fees. There is, however, an exemption for certain ADUs. I'm just going to simplify. Basically, if they're within existing space, we are not allowed to take connection fees. Okay. So the majority of ADUs that are built on the coast don't involve that scenario. So they're mainly detached or attached with new floor space adding. Mm-hmm. So that's when we can collect connection fees.
Yeah, okay, but they'll at least have to pay more water fee if, like, say, a 3-person family moves in to an ADU, or I don't know if you can even rent them out, but maybe you can. Anyway, the other thing I wanted to ask you, I was trying to play catch up on some of the meetings that I missed. And I was hearing about the water pipe that, or I forget what you called it. It was a specific name, but the water extension line that goes down Airport Street to the Big Wave project for the Wellness Center. And I think you guys said you took it in, you voted to take it into the MWSD network to maintain it going forward. But what about all those warehouses that are already on Airport Street that line bypasses? Are they on wells, or did they get a separate agreement to use the water from Pillar Ridge at the time when they were built? Or how do they get billed? Do you know?
There's an existing main line that actually serves the developments that have been there since quite some time.
Yeah.
So we're talking about Pillar Ridge and the other commercial buildings that you mentioned. It's actually a main that is running under the airport. It does not have the adequate pressure to supply the fire suppression system for Big Wave, and that was the reason why Big Wave actually had to run this new main line into this direction.
Well, then the last question I have, I don't want to take up more than 3 minutes, but then if somebody down the road wants to build something, let's say a luxury vehicle storage warehouse a little further down the line, they would have to pay a hookup fee to partially pay Big Wave back for extending that line. Is that my understanding?
No, we have taken now this main line on. So if some new development comes along in that vicinity, and it would fit that they actually connect to this main line, and it's very, I mean, if that would be the preferred main line, I would think.
Yeah.
Then they would have to pay a connection fee to Montara Water and Sanitary District.
Okay. I just wondered, because I remember at one point, if somebody had to build a line to reach a faraway property, then later if more development came, I thought you said that person would have to be paid back slightly in a percentage basis for hooking on. That was a while back. Maybe it was on sewer. I don't remember. Okay, I think that was it. But if you wouldn't mind having them come and ring my doorbell next time they're in my neighborhood for that project, because when I had that fall and I needed some gravel brought over to replace where they dug up my, I guess it's a clean out. Either they put in a new clean out or whatever. I came home one day and there was a big pile of dirt in my driveway, and then later they put in a cover, but I slipped in it because I didn't realize they took all the gravel I had away from that cover. So if you could have them bring by like 2 buckets, it would be great, because they haven't come by to talk to me anyway. Okay.
Yeah, so I'll try to make sure that they contact you when they're there.
Okay, good.
Of course, I relayed the message immediately to them, and I'm surprised the work hasn't been done yet.
Well, I'm not sure they got the exact message. That's why I'd rather talk to them in person.
They got the exact message that I got from you. So
okay,
they should have done the work. So I'm going to follow up on this tomorrow. And,
thanks a lot.
Yes. So I just want to say, you know, it's difficult for us because the particulars of the implementation are sometimes a little bit difficult because, of course, we're setting certain standards that they have to adhere to. And they're coming in and essentially implementing and doing the best they can. So the communication is this is all, you know, of course, how we want it and how we lay it out in the contracts with them. If this is now adhered to, you know, that's a different question. And sometimes we have to really follow up.
Well, the thing is, I have a clean out closer to my house, but they dug a new one or uncovered one I didn't know existed. And in doing so, when they excavated, they took away all the cover of gravel. So that's how I ended up slipping on the mud afterwards, because I forgot the gravel was gone, or I didn't realize the gravel was gone. So anyway, I just want to talk to them about it and see if they actually dug me a new sewer clean out that I wasn't aware of. Anyway,
so the district has a policy to replace the sewer lateral, and that's a fairly new policy for all new mainline projects.
Mm-hmm.
But the way this really works is the decision is made out in the field. So what can happen, for example, is if they discover that the upper section of the lateral is ABS, a material that we expect to last a very, very long time. It's in really good shape. So then only, a certain section that is in need of replacement will be replaced. Let me take the opportunity here and note that, so this is part of our sewer mainline project that Sid has had to go through, and thank you for your patience, Sid, on San Ramon.
San Lucas.
Oh, excuse me, San Lucas, apologies. So let me just mention that with this program, we actually moved from San Lucas then to the Canoff Street sewer. And with this mainline replacement project, within the past days, the Farallon Views School received a new sewer lateral. It falls under the same policy. And, it's a 6-inch lateral. I would say this saved the school about $70,000 to replace this. The lateral was found in extremely bad conditions. It was a collapsed clay lateral. By now they have a brand new lateral at no cost to them.
And I appreciate that. I didn't get charged either. I was just surprised when they dug it up, and I didn't know if they had put down the gravel on the top layer of all the mud. So I'm just, I didn't mean to slip, but now that I know it's a slip hazard, I'd rather get my gravel back. I think they just mixed it in with all the dirt. But I showed them where the other clean out is. I guess they didn't want to go that far. So maybe there was already a clean out there. It was covered up though. Thanks again. I really appreciate all the work, and it was, they were pretty pleasant most of the time. So that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Sid.
Let's go to Dave, and then we'll go to Catherine. Your hand is down now, but.
Well, I put it down. Let me just ask Dave a quick question. I should wait, but I'm not going to. Dave, please get the Mid-Coast Community Council to request the Board of Supervisors to do an inventory of second ADU type units on the coast. I started trying to get them to do that in the late 90s.
So that's
Still
what I was going to speak to.
So let's give the mic to Dave.
So the previous time they upgraded the ADU ordinance, they did do a partial, not totally thorough inventory, including satellite photo analysis, and decided that we had about 250 ADUs already. So that counts against the 466 limit. We may be up to 275 by now. Some of those were legal, some weren't, but that doesn't matter. They still count. ADUs not rentals, but they can be rented out. By state law, the whole reason this thing just went to the Board of Supervisors and the Coastal Commission was state law changes. This was not done by the county at their will. It was done, they had to make changes to comply with state law changes. And the Coastal Commission changes were merely to keep the parking requirements that the county had wanted to drop. And part of those state law changes is you can't charge for water hookups for ADUs. You can charge quote unquote reasonable fees for sewer hookups if there's really a significant increase in sewer requirements. The ADUs, any new ADUs and any lot subdivisions, new houses still count against our 40 units a year LCP limit. So you're not going to be seeing a large number of new homes for ADUs on a yearly basis. That won't help us over 25 or 50 years, but it's going to be a very incremental growth. So far, no state legislator has proposed overriding LCP and Coastal Commission limits, although that could still happen. So just wanted to say all of that. That's
Thanks,
it.
Dave. Clement, you had your hand up?
Yeah, thanks, Scott. I wanted to ask Dave the question that he answered it already about if the ADUs would actually apply towards the 1% growth limit. And Dave, just one more time, a brief correction. It's not all ADUs that are exempt. They have to fall within a specific category
Effectively, every ADU on the mid-coast will fall in the water exemption limits, is my
I think our attorney talked to the county attorney.
Yeah, the ADUs were, there was a proposal to not include ADUs against the 40 unit limit, and the MCC and others convinced the county to include it. That's also true for Half Moon Bay's recently passed ADU ordinance. It counts against the Measure D limits.
Thank you. Thank you.
That's good. Thank you, Dave. All right, let's now go to the first item of new business. Review and possible action concerning return to in-person meetings due to repeal of Governor Emergency Executive Order suspending Brown Act meeting requirements.
Scott, how about the consent agenda, or do we have it?
There is no consent agenda.
Okay, thank you.
Second meeting in the month, Rick.
Oh, that's right.
Actually, you know, I'm so used to accidentally skipping something.
Yes.
I just knew I'd messed it up, and I always appreciate somebody catching me on it. So
I'm just trying to stay in practice.
This is just, you know, we work together as a team. All right, Clarence.
Okay, so thanks. Yes, so this item, essentially we're here on Zoom because the governor issued an executive order that suspends the Brown Act meeting requirements. That order is supposed to run out at the end of this month. Everybody has been hoping very much for AB 361 to pass. I just learned that it was actually signed by the governor tonight. So yes, we're the first ones here, at least on the coast side, to be able to scratch our heads now and figure out what this really means. Because I know there's a lot of excitement that the situation is resolved and that everybody can go back to Zoom. However, the language in AB 361 specifies that virtual meetings can only be held in the event of a declared local or state emergency. So that's one condition that the governor could fulfill until the end of the month if the state emergency is extended, or if essentially he repeals his if he upholds his executive order. The other problem that we're seeing here is that it requires social distancing either on a state or local level. We have a indoor mask mandate in San Mateo County, but no social distancing requirement. So I'm going to leave this up to the board to discuss this, but we have the choice to figure out how we would hold our next board meeting. I think that would be on October 7 in person. Our legal counsel prepared a resolution rescinding our resolution 1669 and essentially setting temporary location for the holding of public meetings, et cetera, et cetera. So the idea is that we have to think through how we prepare for going back to in-person meetings. I get the notion that a lot of agencies have the desire to continue to meet on Zoom. So most agencies are looking at a hybrid approach where the board is actually present, the public is allowed to participate in Zoom. So these are all options that are available. And with that, I'm gonna get it back to the board.
Okay. So I think, what was the bill that the governor signed?
861. 861, I'm sorry.
361.
Is that AB 861?
AB 361.
361, sorry.
Okay. One at a time. What was it?
AB 361.
Ah, okay. I will find a very different bill than what I would have searched on first. Want some time to consider this. Important to know. So it sounds like being able to conduct meetings remotely as we're doing right now would be pretty easy to do if the county health officer had declared social distancing requirements. Is that, Christine, is that correct?
No, not quite. In order to invoke AB 361, there actually has to be a declared state of emergency where either the state or the county has exercised its emergency powers to declare an emergency, and social distancing is recommended as part of that emergency. So the perfect example is the pandemic. That the pandemic occurred, Governor Newsom exercised his emergency powers under the government code that gave him the authority to enact all of the executive orders that he did. Same with the county. But those emergency powers no longer give him the authority since he has declared the emergency has ended. Unless the governor declares another state of emergency for a pandemic, for example, or another natural disaster, and part of that emergency social distancing is recommended, this law gives local governments the ability to go ahead and establish virtual meetings without having to wait for the governor to issue an executive order. It's kind of a procedural mechanism that, had it been in place prior to the pandemic, Montara, we would not have had to wait for the governor to issue an executive order in order to use the virtual meeting option. We would have authority under the law to go ahead and do that. So the next emergency that we have, if it's the type where social distancing is recommended, we are authorized to go to virtual meetings as long as we make certain findings. We do not have that situation at present, so we cannot use this law to justify virtual meetings. And we do need to return to normal Brown Act meeting practices as of October 1st. There's not really a choice. The choice is, does the board want to offer a virtual option along with that?
Is that a virtual option for the public or for the board? I would assume that if we go hybrid, we will have a virtual option for the public, and we will have cameras, thanks to PCTV and all those things, to record the meeting and broadcast it live from our little mini conference room. And but we will have to all attend, is what you're saying.
You would have to comply with the Brown Act. So you would either have to attend or use the teleconferencing requirements that are currently in place, so that if you could not attend in person and you wanted to attend from home, for example, you would need to post the agenda at your home, post your address on the agenda, open your front door to allow the public to come in. Just as if you were in New York, if you were on business, had to attend from New York, you'd have to comply with the requirements that I just listed. So it's really not an option for directors.
I want to take a closer read, because in my quick scan of this, I have a number of questions. One of which is, there does not seem to be a limitation on who can proclaim the state of emergency. And I'm aware, for example, that our general manager has certain emergency powers. So I want to take a closer look at this. Let me just tell you where I'm coming from on this. My employer intended to bring us back for in-person work at least a few days a week, starting the beginning of September. And now the word is not before sometime in January. There is the Delta variant, which is very easily passed in a closed area. And I don't see the sense nor the necessity to meet in person and put anyone at risk, either members of the board, members of the staff, members of the public, or our friends and family that we are isolating with. So I'm very interested to find out exactly what the bounds of this new law is. And in my reading of it, right off the bat, I'm like, I'm not convinced at all that we have to wait on the governor or even the county health officer to declare a state of emergency if we have the ability to do that ourselves. If we do, I'm very interested in continuing what we're doing, which we have found to be very effective. We've received a lot of positive feedback from members of the public about how this facilitates participation, especially for people who haven't been able to come physically to meetings, even during good times. And I'm not super interested in being bound by the law if it doesn't bring advantage and if it actually brings risk. This, when I say I'm not interested in being bound by the law, I'm not interested in being bound by a first reading of this. I want to take a very careful look at it and see what it actually allows. And we're not going to be the only agency taking a good hard look at it. And if we need to, I'm happy to go talk to the county health officer and ask the county health officer if they'll true up what we need in order to be able to exercise our rights under this legislation. So that's a lot of words. That's where I'm starting from. I see Catherine's hand next.
Can do this. I can lower it. This law affects only to standing committees, to committees and agencies that are bound by the Brown Act. So for committee meetings, this board could still take the stand that committee meetings can be held on Zoom. Not standing committee, but ad hoc committees, so that because it's much easier to talk to experts and consultants and so on. I'm surprised at how comfortable Zoom is and actually how productive a Zoom meeting can be. I was skeptical at first. I do think whatever we do, we have to set up our systems so that our public can attend by Zoom. At SAM, there is a discussion to start closed sessions at 6 in the afternoon, 6 p.m. And I think that's fine if you live in Half Moon Bay, but if you have to drive through traffic to get there, it's an imposition. And I think nobody was thinking about these meetings having to go back into on-site meetings. Personally, I would like to draw about every fourth meeting that I can just post the agenda and invite people in, so that I don't need to go down and go to the meeting. I don't like exposing myself. I don't like exposing our crew. And from what I've heard about this Delta variant, I was listening to a physician the other day, and he said, whereas the flu is sort of one person infects one or two people, with the Delta variant, one person can infect up to 30 people. So you have no idea if you've been exposed or not. And I'm concerned about this until we get this new kind of disease under control.
Okay, thank you, Catherine. Rick?
I agree with everything everybody said, and I would certainly prefer Zoom meetings. If I go to LAFCO, I have to drive to like Redwood City in the middle of the day back and forth. And if we have consultants, we have to pay travel to back and forth, huge cost to the district on all of those. But something somebody else hasn't mentioned, we talked at the special district convention with people, and I got info from a lot of people who are a little concerned about privacy and things like that, and said, if I have to go online and post my address for the world where I live, I'm going to resign from the board. And people, that seemed to be a reasonable. I mean, in most cases, you can find out pretty much where somebody lives, but to have to like post it in the agenda and know everybody in the world, oh, so-and-so lives over at so-and-so. Some people are not happy with that and they will actually resign. So that's something other people haven't brought up yet, is that California could lose a lot of really good representatives if that happens. So that's it.
Thank you, Rick. Let me speak for a moment to, let's suppose over the next couple of weeks, we learned that despite all of our strong interest, we have no choice. I just want to explore the no choice corner of this space real quick. Let me observe that our meeting space is too small. I'm going to make it really clear. I will not meet in that space while we're in the middle of this pandemic. I went into that space this week to sign some things, double masked, and I was in and out as quick as I could. And I was mindful that Tracy's working there. And I think Tracy's great, but during this pandemic, I don't want to spend any more time running any risk for people like Tracy. And I know that Clemens has instituted orders for the office to make sure people can stay safe. And that would not involve packing even 5 people into our boardroom,
That's right.
plus staff, plus the community. So I don't see that space as usable for what we would need to do. So we would need to find some alternatives. Clemens had a number of ideas about where else we could meet. So for example, there's the meeting space down in Pillar Ridge. They're not super excited to have a bunch of people in their space. Okay, the school isn't making it easy to meet in the space that we've used before. There's no way that I would recommend we go try to use the meeting space at Seton Hospital in the middle of a pandemic. Okay, so that knocks out the 3 normal places. The Lighthouse, we've had a meeting there before.
How about Costanero? Costanero's empty.
Well, no. Well, they are using it for things, but it's a small, small gatherings I've seen when I walk by. Okay. Maybe that's a possibility, but anything we did would need ample airspace, and this community just doesn't have a lot of that, as we've talked about before. So Clemens had given some thought to, well, maybe we could do some hybrid thing where a very small number of people were in the boardroom and more people were outside in the parking lot. After we talked about it for a while, we're like, if we have to meet in person, we could all be in the parking lot. And I would note a couple of advantages if we do this, given typical evening weather conditions, that might keep our meetings a little shorter. So I don't think anybody would complain about that.
Especially the closed session.
We'd have to bundle up and all, but if push comes to shove, that's the direction I would think maybe we work something out. But here, where we need to, especially in closed session, where we need to deliberate and actually think things through, sometimes that takes a long time. You don't want to do that rushed because everybody's cold and you're outside. So those are some thoughts. Clemens has given some pretty good thought to how the logistics of that might work. And one of the things that I believe he's clear on, and I certainly support, is making our meetings accessible to other people by Zoom has been a real benefit. Let's continue that. So then the question is, okay, are we doing some hybrid thing where some are in person and the rest are remote by Zoom? Or do we keep it simple and keep everybody on Zoom? Which I think I'm hearing there's some interest in. Jim?
I agree, Scott. I think with everybody, I think that we should, Chris, we should do everything we can to see how we can continue with Zoom. I don't feel comfortable being in that boardroom for all the reasons that you gave. So I think we should do what we need to do, what we have to do to keep the Zoom meetings going. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Jim. Let's go to, I think, I don't know if Zoom puts hands up in order on my screen, but I'm going to presume it does. And I think that, let's go to Carlisle first and then to Dave and then to Clemens.
I'm totally 100% in favor of continuing with a hybrid Zoom meeting for the public. And, you know, obviously, even what you guys do as officers, that's up to you. But, you know, you have to probably conform to the Brown Act. But that boardroom gets so crowded, I wouldn't be comfortable going in there yet, maybe down the road someday. And we talked about this a few months, well, maybe a month or two ago at MCC, and Len Erickson said, well, does that mean Sid can come to my house to watch the meeting or attend the meeting? I said, there's no way I would go, no offense, but it's more comfortable to just meet from your house, you know? Why should I go to anybody's house? And I doubt if any of you are going to have people visiting you at your house for a board meeting, but that's just me. I'm much more comfortable right here at home. So Dave Olson, I believe, already has taken care of getting the equipment and the mechanics together for a hybrid meeting. So maybe he might be up next and knows more about it, but that would be my vote.
Thank you, Carla. Dave?
Yeah, I was going to say PCTV is pretty much set up to help with hybrid meetings. They have a small monitor if you want to see people. They don't have speakers. MCC is going to buy a monitor and a couple of Bluetooth speakers so that we can run hybrid meetings. We've our last. But the problem with outdoor meetings is we're headed into what we hope is rainy weather. And even when it's not rainy, it's windy. Holding meetings in the wind and expecting anybody to be able to hear anything over the microphones is really, really iffy. The bills in the Brown Act do allow us to limit people to a safe number of people. So you could limit the public to whatever fits in social distancing. I know in your boardroom, that's probably one, assuming you could get the board spread out, maybe not even one. But anyway, the MCC will continue with hybrid meetings for sure. The straw poll was only 2 of us on the MCC who were willing to meet in person. There was also the possibility of just postponing meetings until it was safe. We don't have any budgetary issues. You guys do, so that's probably not viable for you. The bill AB 361 is very, very clear on what a state of emergency is. It cites several sections of California law. I'm sure Christine could interpret them for you. I didn't dive into those, but I don't think the general manager declaring a local state of emergency would fall within those limitations. So you'd have to go to the county and get the county to declare a state of emergency, even if assuming that Governor Newsom does not extend it. I don't personally think that's very likely, but it's not impossible. And yes, resignations are a very real issue, especially for small local boards. There's another bill, AB 3339, which is very similar to 361. It's also on the governor's desk as of 2 days ago. Presumably it will be signed too. They don't really conflict with each other. So it doesn't help. They both require the state of emergency until 2024. After 2024, we get most of what we want, but meanwhile, we have 2+ years of nothing to help us. So that's where I understand things are.
All right, thank you, Dave. Clemens?
Yeah, thanks. I had a chance to talk to Director Decker in advance of this board meeting. He's not here tonight, but he wanted me to share his concerns. Wanted me to share with you his concerns, similar to what I've heard from all board members about meeting indoors. I also want to essentially ask Christine a question. I think if the directors have to adhere to the Brown Act laws, that also means that we need a quorum present, which also then means that only 2 directors could be at home or traveling or wherever, not attend the meeting. Thanks.
Yeah, if under the Brown Act, with the physical, before COVID, if we wanted to have anyone on remote, we had to have at least a quorum present physically. So that we're pretty clear on that. So what I think we're interested in is under 361, it has some carve-outs that would, under certain conditions, allow us to continue doing what we're doing. We can talk to the governor's office, we can talk to the county health officer, we can explore whether or not the emergency powers that the general manager holds are sufficient. 361 doesn't assert any conditions, as far as I can tell, about a declared state of emergency in terms of who might declare it. And having read I don't remember what the specifically the law was that I was reading, but some time ago I read through the Office of Emergency Services guidance for board members and agency managers, and it's very clear that in certain circumstances, Clemens does hold the power to declare an emergency. So if we need to do that in order to give ourselves clearance to continue safe practice to protect the health and safety of the people who are involved in our meetings, I'm all for it if that's an available option. If not, I'm happy to get on the phone or Zoom call with our county health officer or someone in the governor's office. I think I would not be the only one making those appeals, because every agency is going to be facing this, and anybody paying attention to the science is not going to want to meet in public, either for themselves or for the people, the other people involved. Christine?
Thank you, President Boyd. I just would refer you to AB 61. The actual statute is Government Code 54953. And at the very end of it, it does define state of emergency and refers to the California Emergency Services Act. And also it defines a local emergency, which is defined in Government Code 8630, which can only be proclaimed by a county or a city and a county. And the state of emergency the first definition can only be proclaimed by the state of California. So if you want to look at definitions, go to the statute first and find those. It will refer you to the appropriate statutes that talk about emergency powers and who can enact them and exercise them, just to save you some time.
Yeah, no, thank you for the references. I'll definitely do that. In looking at these, we always get to consider how strict we feel is necessary to do, how strict a reading is necessary. And in this state of, this is not a matter of opinion, this is a matter of health and safety. And for some people, it could be life-threatening. For other people, it could be lifelong medical complications. But I'm not willing to give someone a cold just for us to do our meetings. So I'm going to be very much leaning towards what will let us get this job done.
Okay.
let me say too, I've talked to Clemens about whether or not we need our first meeting in October. It may be that other people lay the groundwork for us, or maybe the governor comes around now that things have simplified for the governor to be able to do his job. As we see with him all of a sudden signing a bunch of things that have been waiting for yesterday's results or Tuesday's results. So if we don't have to have our first meeting in October, that gives us a little more time for us to see what happens around the state. So
good idea, Scott.
You know, it's a little bit of, you ever watched a velodrome race, the bicycles going around on the sloped inside, you know, and there's all the bikes going really slow at first and they're all tracking together, and you kind of wait for when's someone going to go, and then they all go in a mad rush. I think we're in that part right now where we're all kind of waiting to see who goes first. But what we all know is our actual job is protecting health and safety. That's what we do in this job. Okay, Clemens, and then Catherine, and then Carla.
Yeah, thanks. I just want to add to the comments that you just made, Scott. The governor has probably sore right hand from signing all these bills, if he's right. I think that's a great suggestion. I want to just mention that this month we have no problem calling a special meeting if needed. So if we want to wait to adopt the resolution that is in front of the board, for example, or make any other decision that falls within this month, I think that is a very simple undertaking. 24-hour notification for a special meeting to resolve a situation like this. Thank you.
Good with that.
I 2 points now. One is that I can understand with the defund the police movements in various parts of the state and the way things have been going on certain levels. People would not, unless you had a personal security detail, might not want to make your address public. We are blessed to be in a socially stable and caring community like Montara and Moss Beach and the coast side. But there are other places where people could be very worried about their family and their homes. I'm trying to think, in Portland, several homes were attacked of public officials. And in Seattle as well, I believe, but that they're not Montara, thank goodness. That said, there is some stuff going on at SAM, which we will report on during the SAM meeting, but just for the public, SAM has had 31 BOD violations, and we need to work out the modern or up-to-date. We need to get more up-to-date on our non-domestic waste control program. And if SAM doesn't get in control of it, SAM has received emails from the water board saying they will be more than happy to set the rules and the standards for SAM to follow. So there may be, SAM is having a special meeting next Thursday, and then it has another meeting in September. And we're going to need to be on top of this. Grenada and Half Moon Bay are only lucky that Montara is on SAM to help guide us with some sanity, because they don't get it. They don't understand what their stalling is doing.
So Catherine, just at least at SAM, there's plenty of outdoor space out back for public meetings.
Yeah.
Carlisle, please.
I'm just going to offer a suggestion. Rather than wing it and decide on your own that you want to not have the, cram everybody into that board meeting, maybe you should ask county council to drive over to the coast, hopefully when they're trimming trees or something, and take a look at that boardroom, because it's obvious when you see it, it's not adequate. And maybe just us saying it won't give the same impression as him seeing it in person. So I don't know. Maybe he can give us a waiver or something like that. That's my suggestion. Thank you.
All right, thanks. Well, what we have something in front of us. I think Clemens has given us a possible out. I don't think we need to act on this right now.
I agree.
I just want to get something on the books. I'm not super thrilled with our options at the moment. So I'm inclined to think let's use the end of the month as a forcing function to figure out what we do in a special meeting to either enact this or take some other action that might. Christine, it looks like you're getting a little help there. The good kind of help. Mine's asleep right behind me. So that's my suggestion is let's do some homework. Let's make some phone calls. Let's read the legislation and the background stuff and work towards some answer. And then if we need to, we can call the special meeting. It's easy enough for us to call the special meeting now under the current legal constraints before the end of the month. After the end of the month, it gets complicated because the emergency stuff lifts.
If you need a motion, I would so move what you just said. So
how about we, I don't think we need a motion. If we just don't act now, we'll have to have a special meeting to resolve it.
Fine.
Well, in that case, I'd like for us to consider drafting a letter to the various big guys about the problems and actually call CSDA, because for not every agency has a nice, big, expansive boardroom. There are many, many small districts, and this is affecting many, many small districts, and maybe we can get a coalition together.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, even, I mean, CCWD has a very nice, it's modest, but it's a nice boardroom. Even that isn't good enough really to give people the kind of social distancing that would make sense in this condition. And, we've always been pretty darn frugal about what we do with our space and what we spend on it. I've always been a little jealous of CCWD because they had the opportunity to do something modest but nice. GCSD, same thing.
Theirs is not big enough for their space for their board members. They're going to have to keep all the public out.
Well, and that's because, none of us are doing the things that, lavish spending on our boardroom facilities. GCSD's space is well appointed, but they have windows at least that they could open, but all of them are too small for a pandemic. So, Catherine, I like your idea. Clemens, what do you think? Shall we draft up a letter and get it out to the county health officer and the governor's office?
Sure. I think we can do that and send it also to CSDA.
And Rick, maybe you could get, if not LAFCO, at least the local CSDA to get all the local boards to sign on this. I know most of them have small boardrooms too.
I believe I have to go check at the end of our last LAFCO meeting, which I'll be reporting on in a few minutes. I believe one of the people said that she would not be attending if we went public. I'd have to go back and look at the video again, but nobody's in favor of this. So it's,
I know that
I think there's going to be a groundswell of opposition to this process because everybody has shown for a year and a half, this works just fine. It's better for the public. The whole point of the Brown Act and all of that stuff, make it easier for the public, make it transparent for the public. We can't be any more transparent than we are right here. And unless I was like invisible or something, but I can't see this standing up. I think there's going to be a groundswell and the legislature is going to be forced to do something because this is bad for everybody.
Let's lead it. And Dave, would you guys like to sign the letter too? Let's just circulate a letter and get a lot of signatures.
They always say that the more organizations who sign the letter, the better chance you have of getting action. So get everybody to sign it we can think of.
I think we need to send one right away.
Yep.
It's mid-September. And then I think we could take the same thing and see if others want to sign on. I could see partners at SAM, and I think everybody at SAM. This is something I think we can all agree on. I know Half Moon Bay is very interested. We may be on the outs on a lot of topics, but on this topic, I think they feel very strongly about taking care of everybody involved. And I don't think there's going to be, there's not going to be an inch of room between most of us on what's sound health policy here. We got a lot of hands raised. We'll go to Carlisle, then Dave, then Greg.
Sorry, I'm putting mine down. I forgot to take it down.
Okay.
I just wanted to say a couple of things. It was proposed that the MCC send such a letter, and I argued against it, saying that there were plenty of other people sending letters. But if you guys send one, we'll be happy to sign on and accept a second version of it, I think. I can bring that up at our next meeting on next Wednesday. I did want to say also that I think you could actually take one action, you don't have to, which is to affirm that you want to allow even after you do some form of in-person meetings.
You cut out that last.
Sure, sorry. I was going to say, you don't have to, but you could affirm by resolution that you intend to continue hybrid meetings even when you do go back to in-person meetings, whenever that is. Obviously, that's not urgent, but it's something the MCC has already discussed, but has not made an actual vote on. And the other thing is, you don't all have to publish your home addresses if you're not meeting in the office. If 3 of you go into a single location, the other 2 can be at a coffee house or outside somewhere. It doesn't have to actually be their home address. You still have the problem of being near the public, but as everybody is, it's really unlikely people will actually show up. That's it.
So Rick, we could meet at Hop Dogma.
I was going to say, they got tons of space there.
No,
We're out of amber.
Well, you could meet at Hop Dogma for SAM, but you couldn't do it for Montara.
No, because we would be out of the district, and you can, a quorum has to be in the district the office.
I see. So you may not go to Hop Dogma, so you could go to Hop Dogma. Let's go to Greg. He's been patient.
So I'm in agreement with everybody about the risks. In terms of action items, if Clemens would share what he drafts with me, I'm going to ask Michelle to put this on the agenda as an item for us to approve at our next Wednesday meeting, sending the letter. And of course, by the time everybody wakes up tomorrow morning, the Board of Supervisors will already have my personal request. Just shaking my head at the lack of competence, I'm not sure what to call it, of our state government. Just absolutely amazing. But please share what you draft, and I'll be glad to contribute if you want. And I would like to get something off tomorrow.
All right.
Thank you.
Scott, one more quick addition to your letter. I think our letter so far is described as fairly generic. What I would add is specifics about lack of adequate air conditioning systems and HEPA filters and, the hundreds of thousands of dollars that would have to be invested in to keep the air clean also, not just the small size.
Good point.
I mean, that's mega expenses. And, I think that would help too.
Okay. Greg, I would just comment. I don't think it's right or fair that our governor has been so hamstrung recently, but I think that was on purpose. And I think some people are really pleased with themselves for doing things to hamstring our state government. But thankfully, some of those constraints have been dealt with. And I think we're starting to see a whole bunch of things queued up and ready to go. And I'm really pleased to see just how quickly these things have been done, but any number of things could have been blown up into huge issues to try to overturn the will of the public at the ballot box. So I think it was sound and unfortunately very necessary to be extremely conservative in the actions taken at the state level until this matter was passed. And I strongly support what so many people do, and that's reform of the recall laws. They've been horribly abused. It might have been appropriate 100 years ago, but we have other ways to deal with that. Not the least of which is sometimes you just suffer through and wait until the next election. And given that we're only 1 year away from that next election, hardly any point in doing this other than just punishing an opposition when you can't beat them at the ballot box. Greg?
It's not the governor that I'm shooting at here, although his leadership could have caused the legislature to come up with bills that made some sense. He didn't have to sign them, and I certainly understand playing it safe before the recall, as you pointed out. But somebody didn't get the legislature to do the right thing.
Can we have this conversation offline?
Okay.
It's not really on the agenda.
Well, I just...
And with the fact that I'm saying it, oh my.
Well, let me just say, you know, even at the all politics are local, and sometimes it's really easy to take a look at headlines or listen to what's being said on TV or the radio. And one of the things I really appreciate about these kind of discussions that we have is like we got a bunch of bright, good-hearted people putting their heads together, trying to solve some problems. And some things are delicate and complicated. And I think it's an important thing that we can do that we do as part of our work for the public. And that is convey, you know, life isn't always simple. So you got to have some people kind of work their way through it. And sometimes as much as we want quick, simple answers, what we really need is thoughtful, deliberative work that sometimes takes some time. When you think back to how long it took us to finally wind up with the keys to the water agency. I only spent 5 years doing it. Jim and Peter spent much longer. And you know, Catherine, you've got a few years on me because you were here before I was. And you know, good things come to those who wait sometimes. And I think it's good that we get to wrestle with the complicated stuff and do it in a way where the public can see it. I think it's great. And we should vent our frustration from time to time, like Greg is doing, and just go, you know, it ought to be better than this because it ought to. But sometimes you just got to get on the Zoom meeting and do what you can. Okay, so Clemens, I'll talk with you. Can we talk in the morning and we can get something turned around?
Yes.
We'll get that out and then we'll distribute to our friendly neighboring agencies. And Dave and Greg, I'm really glad you're here. Thank you for doing that. We love the collegiality between the agencies. This is part of the fun of living in a small community. Okay.
I will be happy to get in touch with North Coast County Water District. I'm sure they would sign. They have a relatively small office and boardroom. Pacifica City Council doesn't have a huge space for their board members. So, and Rick, your point on HEPA filters and ventilation and all of that is nobody has that kind of excess in their budget for doing that.
You know, if it means that we have to build a community center, you know, we've been through adversity. Sometimes you find a good outcome. I talked to Clemens about this on Monday as we were talking about the agenda. Maybe
okay, you're off topic, but maybe. I tell you what, put it on the next agenda for the emergency meeting on September 30th.
All right. Okay. Let's close out this item. Let's go to reports. Sewer Authority Midcoast.
Catherine, you're charged up. Go for it.
Oh, believe me, I am charged up. As folks heard, we have had our 31 plant upsets. I was reading the NPDES permit for SAM today, and upsets.
Non-domestic waste.
No, not I read that one too, but the SAM operating permit. Okay. And it talks about plant upsets as a definitely a bad thing to happen. And the problem with the plant upsets, and particularly being in the oh God, there's so many acronyms. I'm going to not use acronyms. I'm just going to use like English. The sewer plant has a permit from the state and the federal government to operate. The state and the federal government gave SAM monies back in the late 80s and in the 90s for its expansion. And it threw in some requirements to have a non-domestic waste control permit program. The plant exceedances in biological oxygen demand and chemical oxygen demand have caused violations of our operating permit. When we violate our operating permit, we're actually in violation of state and federal agreements that we made. So this is a big deal. Our operating permit expires December 31st, 2022. We have to be working towards meeting all the requirements to have it renewed. And it has been problematic. There has been, I think, some miscommunication, a lot of rumor mongering. But the facts are that the BOD, the biological oxygen demand toxics, are being found at 6 times what is allowed in various manholes in Princeton. The low-hanging fruit for fixing this is the breweries. The breweries are saying, why are we picking on them and no one else? And we've tried explaining to them that no, they're the ones who are closest to these manholes. They're probably the ones causing the problem, and we're going to be looking at the whole program. Grenada and Half Moon Bay decided at Monday night's meeting that they were not going to cede their authority for the non-domestic waste program to SAM. The problem is that SAM has the authority. Half Moon Bay doesn't have it. I don't know what their attorney has been reading. Grenada is trying to figure out how to protect the breweries from having to put in pre-treatment or pre-treatment programs to keep this stuff from going into the sewer system. And so there was a very confusing motion on Monday night to extend the discussion and the permit process for the breweries. And that's kind of where we left it. So that was when I got upset and started looking at things. And then today, Keishan sent us 2 emails from the Regional Water Quality Control Board. And essentially what they said is get your stuff together on pre-treatment, which is what we'd like to see, or on your BOD and chemical oxygen demand toxics program, or the state's going to come in and make you do it and set the rules. Now, they don't care about local businesses. The state really doesn't. But one of my bigger concerns is what if the state and through the state, the feds start leaning on them, and the state water control board says, no, we're not going to renew your permit. All of this stuff is, and fines are coming. If we don't have an active discussion on camera, because the regional boards are watching our meetings on when they're on PCTV, they're not tuned in while the discussions are live, but they are watching them and they are asking for reports. I am very concerned. And as Greg said, the problem is getting up close to $1 million. Part of it, about $500,000 of it, we can justify at splitting at what the plant construction costs were, because we're putting in an aeration basin that should have been put in the late 90s, but it was felt it wasn't needed. So it's costing us more now, but we've had all the money we've gotten a better product and we haven't had to run it. So it's probably saved us money. It was probably a good decision. But anyway, that said, so $500,000 we can split with a 50, 30, 20. The rest of it is problematic. And I don't see that Montara should be paying for this. It's not Montara Water and Sanitary that pays for it. It's our ratepayers. And I don't know why our ratepayers should be paying for the Granada mismanagement of its permit program. And the same for the Half Moon Bay mismanagement of their permit program. So I'm very upset. The extension of our operating permit or the denial of our operating permit could lead to even bigger bucks and major expenditures requirements from the state and the EPA. And those people are not nice. They don't care about local costs. I keep pointing that out, but it's absolutely true. So there is going to be a special meeting of the SAM board sometime next Thursday. There's a doodle poll going out. I made a proposal to Barbara Dye, which I'm not going to make public because I haven't heard from her yet, but I think there are solutions. But really, everybody needs to be telling SAM, get this done. You've got the program, you have the resolution, you are operating the program, it's been on your budget for all these years. Now it's time, this BOD demand and the problems that the plant has been having have made us look more closely at this. And it's time for us to just say, yes, we're going to fix it. We had a very good study done by Brown and Caldwell about what's going on in the plant. And we now have a brewery expert who is consulting with SAM, who is also working on this. He's one of the top folks in the nation. So, but again, it's a matter of getting the two other member agencies to work with them on this.
I just got one quick addition to everything Catherine said, which was great, is that another thing the feds or the state could do is said, you guys can't run this place anymore. We're just going to merge you. We're going to form one agency and boom, we're going to run it for you. And if that kind of thing occurs, then they could easily say, oh, you guys just split up the cost for all of this. And then Montara, again, could end up paying for everybody else's problems. So we're all trying to stop all that from happening by actually showing some progress, like Catherine said. So.
Clemens?
Yeah, Catherine mentioned the emails from the state. I want everybody to understand that the emails mention that pre-treatment is an option, that the state comes down and demands pre-treatment. And I'm going to translate it into English. That means that SAM would be required to build more treatment plants in advance of the existing treatment plant. So this would
that could be good. As Scott said, there may be some in bad news, sometimes good things can happen. But it's not going to solve the immediate problem. That's going to take some long-term planning. But the state could do it, and I want us to figure out a way. We've done it in the past. We've got to tell Half Moon Bay and Grenada, they've created the problems. Don't ask my ratepayers. Don't ask us to pay for your problems.
So let me see if I understand correctly. So you're working, Sam is working with a consultant who understands breweries and the impacts they can have on wastewater systems.
Yes.
We have experienced problems with the biological oxygen demand, and we're pretty sure those we've been able to observe things in the waste stream that seem to maybe have something to do with the vicinity of breweries.
It's in the Princeton area.
We've been doing expensive testing of the Princeton area. And actually we started out doing any of the non-domestic areas to see where it was coming from.
So Sam chasing backwards.
It's been localized.
So Sam started chasing backwards up the system to see what direction it might be coming from, and wound up in Princeton saying, something's happening here. We need to figure it out. We need to get on top of it. I think there's been some speculation based on the work with the consultant and in talking with people involved in the processes. There might have been like large volumes of bad batch or something flushed all at once. I'm curious, like, for example, if I have a batch that goes bad, a few thousand gallons, and it's useless because something went wrong, because, you know, industrial process, sometimes that happens. No matter how good you are, sometimes something happens and you need to dispose of it. There are ways to do it in a way that if you understand how a sewer treatment plant works, you could get all the stuff into the plant, maybe slowly, maybe break it down.
They discussed all those.
Do it, you know, at a slower rate. It would require a little more management and planning, but I don't know, based on what I've heard so far, that it would cost more money. It would just require, please don't send 5,000 gallons of a spoiled batch all at once.
Well, there's that.
So, Catherine.
So what I'm trying to get to here is I've heard pushback from the manager at Grenada, who seems to, I don't know what he's doing, and I am concerned. I'm just going to leave it at that. I understand business owners being concerned. They don't want to be burdened with expensive regulations and controls, but I don't know that we're talking about a great deal of expense. I think what we're talking about is finding a way to work together, which understands the complexities of the plant and the costs involved. And all of us, whether it be the people here in this meeting, the general manager at GCSD, the owners and operators of the breweries, we should all be concerned about big fines being levied against the sewer authority, because everybody's going to be hurting for that and wishing that hadn't happened. So we need to get our act together. And I'm actually with the regulators on this. I think we should get our act together. I want to push pretty hard on, hey, everybody, let's get to the table. Let's figure this out. Let's set in place some practices that make good sense. It sounds like the consultant we have is good. So, Catherine, what I'm doing is, as a board member, I'm encouraging our SAM reps to carry to SAM, get people to the table, hammer this out, calm the fears about great expense on treatment and all. We don't need to be talking about building pre-treatment facilities that take years to get done to deal with the problem that we've got today. What we need to do is we're having a problem all of a sudden. It seems to come in bursts. We have some people that we think might be able to help us out by modifying their practices a little bit. Let's get to the table and talk these things through, and let's calm down some of the heated rhetoric, and let's ask GCSD why they want to take a laissez-faire approach to a really big problem, and ask if they're really interested in carrying all of the costs that may come from this. Because I'm fully prepared to have the people who start a problem bear the cost of the problem.
There is a pretreatment program already in place in the food industry. It's called a grease trap. And it's, you know, grease floats, and so your back sinks and all of your flow goes through this grease trap, and you have to manually or vacuum it out and separate it from your sewage. It has labor involved, and it's a low-tech kind of based on physics thing. Pre-treatment programs are a standard and have been a standard for a very long time. And the non-domestic waste control program has been a part of SAM since its inception. Mm-hmm. And SAM has been doing it all along. The one thing that I think we are looking at now is the breweries have come in, and so there's that new kind of waste, but we're also in a serious drought. And as this board heard a couple meetings ago, it has a serious impact on the sewer system. And it changes how things work in the sewer system, because the sewer systems are designed on a certain dilution of water. And if we're not getting that dilution of water, the processes don't work like they should. And the third thing that I've thought of, and I'm sure there's lots of people here who can add other changes in the last year, is with COVID, people in homes, but particularly people in businesses, are using much more frequently sanitizers and stronger sanitizers. It's not just hydrogen peroxide that breaks down. There's some chemicals in some of these things that are very persistent. And they also change the biology of the whole system. And the biology of a sewer system starts with the input from each one of the contributors. So there's a lot of different problems that we'll have to iron out. Maybe if we get enough water in the rain, we won't have such a terrible problem. But this has pointed out, and Scott, you're right, it has pointed out the need for a more aggressive pre-treatment standards for the businesses on the coast. We've been very lucky. We don't have a whole lot of heavy metal producers and paint producers and all of those kinds of things. And our car washes recycle their own water because the water is expensive. But there are other problems, and we just need to work towards them. But we've got to get Half Moon Bay's statement that they were not going to cede their authority on non-domestic waste was a stunning statement. It really is indicative of a major difference of understanding, or I would even say misunderstanding of the SAM permits and the SAM processes and the federal and state processes.
I saw Michelle's hand. Michelle, did you have a comment?
Scott, we're way beyond a SAM report, and we're into a full SAM discussion at this point.
Well,
I don't know if that's a problem.
The reason that we have the SAM report is to make sure that the board's apprised and able to provide feedback to the SAM reps. So I think that's what we're doing.
Okay.
I saw Michelle's hand. Michelle, did you have a comment or so you dropped your hand?
Yeah, I think that there's other places in Princeton that are worthy of a letter. I know that the rollout of the source control program is complicated and it will take time, but I think if the application goes out to everybody, there were 94 people on the source control program in 2014 when it was discontinued. And I'm thinking that, send out that letter to those 94 people, see how many are dead, see how many are alive, but they at least get the information that there's a problem ASAP. How you administrate that, through SAM is another issue, but at least everybody gets the notification at the same time. Why the 8 breweries, distilleries, and a winery that is not actually producing any wine, and a kombucha place, which is producing, everybody's producing such a small amount, that I think that you would at least be perceived as being more fair. And that's an administrative thing. Just send out the email and then it'll take us 30 or 60 days to get back to you, but at least everybody is notified at the same time. That's my only suggestion.
Okay, thank you. Carlisle?
I was just wondering about the accountability. When I first listened in on some of the SAM meetings, sounded like they couldn't really pinpoint where the BOD spikes were coming from. So at this point, what can you do? And like you say, it's really happening within the Granada Sanitary District area. So they have accountability to take care of their customers and make sure that or shall I say, monitor their customers, just like you would up here. If you suddenly found somebody was giving out extra sewage that upsets the plant's digester. Thank you.
All right, thanks. Catherine?
Yeah, first, Michelle, the report that you were talking about with that list of businesses was for raising the MWSD fees in 2014. The program was never discontinued.
That's right.
And we've been careless with our language, but it is still going on. And but the upsets have made us realize that with the drought and other problems, we need to be looking at it more closely. But it has been continuing on under SAM for all these years. And what we've said is we know the general area, but we can't specifically test the individual businesses until we have their approval. And the question has been, who's going to pay for testing each of those businesses? And the businesses don't want to pay for it. And I don't see that Montara should necessarily pay for it. I think Granada could pay for it. They're in Granada. Granada is supposed to be in charge of them. So Granada could use its own assets to pay for those for their customers if they want to. But I don't think they should be asking Montara and Moss Beach and Half Moon Bay to be, oh, that is a funny tail on your cat, Christine. Anyway, so it's not up to us to be paying for the oversights that Granada has had in the past few years.
Okay, Greg.
You're on mute, Craig.
Just wanted to cover a few things and hopefully wrap it up. We're definitely over $1 million in cost on this. We were at 660,000 without including any capital equipment about a month ago for extra testing and processing. So it's more likely 2 million. The discussion at the last meeting, the thing that I found disturbing was that people seem to ignore the impact on the ratepayers. And the discussion was kind of pro-business. So I think it's a problem that the ratepayers are going to be absorbing this. I would comment that Debbie Ruddock made a comment back in July at a meeting. And if you read between the lines, what she was saying is she agrees with Scott. She doesn't want to pay for problems that they don't cause. So there is a lot of people who are thinking they are not to blame and ready to fight over the money. So just, I would have some sensitivity to that. And then with respect to the brewers or the businesses, at one point they believed it was $1,000 a test and it was going to be frequent tests. We're now told it could be $350 a test, but we don't know how many. And these businesses run on small margins. So this definitely is a shock to them. And I would just ask that we all take a deep breath before saying anything too outrageous. I'm confident the SAM staff seems to be doing a good job getting a handle on it. This is a problem that Brown and Caldwell, a national engineering firm, reported was unprecedented in their experience. They had never seen levels of BOD, COD. It actually went beyond the ability of the instruments SAM was using to measure the pollution. Okay, and the general manager of, to your point, of GCSD believes it's a process change issue. You know, I'll just withhold judgment on that. But with a lawsuit going on, I think you want to be careful about, you know, being respectful of everybody's viewpoints here. And I do agree some pretreatment is probably going to be required, but there's a lot of work to be done to figure out exactly where it's coming from. So those are my comments.
All right, thank you, Greg. Dave?
A couple of things. I want to point out that in addition to there being a couple more breweries than there used to be, all of the restaurants in Preston are doing a very different business this last 18 months than they used to do. They're doing a lot more takeout. They're doing a lot more fried foods. Some of the stuff that used to be draining into the harbor got fixed and it's now going into it's not clear GCSD has any legal authority on any of this stuff. Remember, they're not controlling those sewer mains. The county is approving permits, not GCSD. GCSD has to comment on them. You guys know better than I do what legal authority you would have to put in place if a brewery was established in Lost Beach or Montara. And I would also point out that a lot more people are at home doing a lot of really unusual things over the last 18 months, including home brewing.
Wait a minute, watch out there now.
I know. Jumping on just the brewers seems a little premature given that there's no proof yet it's them. But I don't think it's GCSD. SAM owns the treatment plant. It's clearly SAM's problem. It's obviously the problem of everybody that's part of SAM as well. But the last thing we want to see is another us versus them type lawsuit showing up. Please don't dump on each other, work together.
Well, thank you, Dave. Let me speak to a couple of points. One, I started by saying, let's get some people to the table and have some reasoned conversation. Two, the consultant that we're working with does point us to the likelihood of, I think Dave left. Well, the consultant does point us to the likelihood of breweries as something we need to take a look at because of the nature of the business and the heavy biological oxygen demand of their work and their ability, whether or not they have, but they do have the ability to do volume business into the sewer system, into the collection system with heavy demand material. So we would be would be abrogating our duty to not take a look at a very likely source. I firmly believe that no brewer is going to discharge thousands of gallons into the system for no good reason. So let's talk. Let's talk. If you feel the need to do a large discharge, let's work out a procedure for this, because we do have a plant downstream that does have that is dramatically impacted by heavy oxygen demand of what's in the waste stream. It's built to take the normal ebb and flow of what comes to the plant. If somebody's going to surcharge it with something that changes that biological mechanism or puts a demand outside of the design capabilities of the plant, we need to control that. Now, as to the legal authority, the non-domestic waste source control program is part of our legal authority to administer what is discharged into the collection system. And there's no question that we have the right and the obligation to manage the non-domestic waste sources. And we have long had a program in place. The fees for that program are designed so that the businesses that place the risk on the system bear the cost of the management of the NDWSCP program that SAM operates. This is in my 20 plus years on MWSD and many of those on SAM. It's been an ongoing program. And I can tell you no restaurant was ever happy that we came around to inspect their grease trap, but it was a regular process and they got to pay for the privilege, because if you want the benefit of the sewer system to deal with the stuff you don't want to keep in your fine facility, you're going to connect up and you're going to help us make sure that what's going into the system is not going to place a terrible burden on it. The grease traps are a really clear example. You don't get greasebergs from not putting grease into the system. You get greasebergs from putting grease into the system. Cheapest way to deal with a greaseberg is to make sure that you don't put the grease down the drain. So it's all been about prevention, and this is SAM's duty, but it is also the duty of the individual agencies. And while SAM administers it for the individual agencies, I don't believe any of us have any real claim to saying we don't have that responsibility. So together we've got to work to figure this out. But SAM has done the work to find the area of concern. SAM has done the work working with a good engineering firm to figure out where some likely sources are. And what we know is we don't have in place procedures and limitations about what someone who deals in high biological oxygen demand material by the thousands of gallons, we don't have an effective set of procedures in place right now for them. And we need to have those. It doesn't necessarily have to cost real money, but we do have to have those. And that means we do have to get to the table, and we do have to do, as you say, Dave, work as people of goodwill together to make sure that what we do doesn't result in a problem that puts a whole lot of unnecessary cost on everybody, because that's not the way our society is intended to work. We're supposed to work together to avoid big impacts to our, the people of our community. So that's our duty. And I don't want to be so delicate about this. Greg, to your point, I was sitting here thinking, yes, I want to be delicate, but you started by talking how much this is costing. Catherine pointed out what the regulators are saying. It is past time to get people to the table and say, you may be surprised to find out that there's a regulator that has something to say about your connection to the system and what you put down it. But here we are. And in the same way that our regulators are not shy about doing their duty, we need to not be shy. We can be polite, but we also need to be assertive. And I believe we are past time to get to the table with the people who our research shows may need to change something about the way that's going on. We need to get there, and we need to have the conversations. We need to do some testing. I really like the idea that maybe GCSD ponies up for the first round of tests. I don't know. I don't, if it's $350 a test, first round of tests should not be terribly expensive. It's gonna be a lot less expensive than the fines. So let's get on with it. But going forward, if there's something where testing on a regular basis has to happen, we need to help figure out how cheaply can that be done. And then we need to convey to small businesses, hey, this is part of being connected to a sewer system. So, you know, work this in, you know, you don't get to negotiate with PG&E about your rates. There are certain costs. Right. And if you kill our plant, the costs are going to be great. So let's keep the costs sane and small and managed. And we'll work together to try to figure out what's the least expensive way to keep the plant from being upset. Okay, that was a long screed, but I think it's really important that our duty and our legal authority to act on this is manifestly clear.
Let me add, it's not our authority. Our authority is given to us by the state and the EPA, and it is our charge. It is our mission. It is our responsibility. And Sam is the one who holds the permit. Mm-hmm. And we need, you are absolutely right. We have spent too many years not working together as a team.
So let's get Sam to get folks to the table and let's get this hammered out. But if anyone at a member agency wants to drag feet or deflect, I think the regulators have decided and spoken. They're not interested in seeing any more of that.
That's right.
And
they were
very
clear.
Word of caution: if someone at a partner agency thinks that this is the way to force a consolidation that they've been agitating for a long time, this is not the way to do it. Because getting the regulator to come in and force a solution, you know, the sand plant expansion, there wasn't anybody involved in that from any of the three agencies who was happy with what we had to do or what it cost us. That was done at the, you know, it's a kind of a shotgun wedding kind of thing, and nobody was happy about it. And we don't need to set up the conditions to let that happen again. We can solve this problem.
And I will say at the last, there was a committee meeting at Half Moon Bay. They were talking about annexing Moonridge. And Councilwoman Ruddick said, well, if we're going to look at annexing, let's just look at annexing the whole coast. And that was within the last 6 weeks.
Well, I'd say that's a better approach than throwing Sam to the wolves and letting the regulators take things over. Because we can meet them on that battlefront about annexation, but the regulators are not to be trifled with.
They will not be trifled with. So that's what's going on at SAM. Otherwise, everything is good. The BOD is under control. But all of the plant upsets are not under control. There are still some things that are going a little wonky. So there is going to be a managers meeting again on Tuesday. And so that's one of the places the three agencies get together. And so it will be interesting to see what comes from that.
All right. That was a heavy duty SAM report. Let's go to the Mid-Coast Community Council meeting. Greg.
Briefly, I hope. The county has been following up on some of our requests to deal with eucalyptus and wildfire problems, and so has Caltrans. The county's been spending $500,000 cutting eucalyptus on the El Granada medians. They're not quite done, I see today, but they expect to be done by the end of the month. What came out of that was something that I think you and Dave would appreciate, that Parks now wants to use the cleared space for parking for the pump track, which would seem to resolve the longstanding question about who's responsible for the medians. Because if the county is saying they can use that land for parking, then I guess they have the legal liability for it all, and that kind of would end that discussion. But I know that's gone on for a while. Also, the good news is the Board of Supervisors, was it Tuesday's meeting, approved $75,000 for a scoping study for the El Granada fire area. That's going to be important. There is some issue about what the risk we're trying to mitigate is. And it seems that the current plans that Parks is following are for a different wind than the wind that actually causes the Diablo risks. And that's going to be, I think, handled by an expert in this case. Caltrans, as I think I heard mentioned, is cutting down eucalyptus at Medio Creek and Frenchman's Creek. I don't know if it was the 4 tickets I filed for that in the Martini Bypass and Lantos Tunnel or somebody else got through to them, but they were doing the work as we all experienced. I saw a letter in your material today that apparently nothing's been done in the Martini Bypass yet. There's also no action visible on Highway 1 north of the Lantos Tunnel, which is an evacuation choke point. But I know some people who are very interested in getting that done. It's probably a big multi-jurisdictional thing because Caltrans might only clear, 10, 12, 15 feet on either side of a roadway, but the trees are tall enough that they'll fall and block that from further away. So the neighboring parcels also need to be dealt with, and there's an initiative underway to try and get the CFPD, Coastside Fire Protection District, to change their abatement ordinances to deal with vacant lots or lots that have eucalyptus trees that are not being maintained and actually take care of healthy eucalyptus that pose a health hazard. It doesn't seem like that's going to happen soon, but we've been asking for some months. And I think that's it. Dave, you want to add anything?
No, I will only say that Caltrans was doing it in coordination with Fire Safe Council. So it's probably mostly in response to the MCC's requests. Too bad we didn't request it on peak hours, but same would be.
Okay, thank you. Rick, the CSDA report.
You were on mute.
There we go. The last meeting, which they had a lot of trouble with the email lists, they did actually have a Zoom meeting with some consultants come in, but because of a lot of the email misses, only like 6 people attended. So they're remodifying all the lists. They're going to purge all the lists, basically start the entire thing over again. The new president, Katie, is going to be doing a good job, and I volunteered to help her if she needs anything to get that all set up again. But the next meeting is going to be in November.
Okay, LAFCO report, Local Agency Formation Commission.
Oh, this is going to be boring compared to everybody else's meetings. That's fine. There are like 3 things on the agenda. One is the standard, all these unincorporated areas near Redwood City and West Bay. There are a bunch of houses that are kind of out in the middle of nowhere, which are losing service or needed service. And on the consent agenda, there's like 4 lots that are merged into West Bay Sanitary District. They presented the budget update on where we are. Because of COVID, we're actually good on both sides. We're spending less and making more. So LAFCO's doing just fine on the budgets. The only item that was a real item was a discussion on the East Palo Alto Sanitary District. And because of COVID, the municipal service review was dragging and getting started slowly. So they've extended it to like the end of the year or the end of next year or something. So that's not going to be resolved for at least a year, but that was it.
Okay, thank you. Christine, attorney's report.
No report. Thank you.
Okay, director's reports. I'll note that there's been some tree clearing happening on Elm. We're trying to establish who's doing that, whether that's Caltrans or not. But I saw at least a dozen stumps and a bobcat running through, tearing things out. And I don't know if this is the best way near a waterway to be clearing things, disturbing ground cover, but if anyone knows, we're interested to know whether or not it's Caltrans, and we'll be reaching out to them to inquire.
Larry Young reports it is Caltrans.
I thought it was Caltrans also.
We don't have any information from Caltrans directly to know that, and they didn't have anyone from Caltrans on site when I was there. So I didn't disturb the contractor doing the work. So, I mean, hopefully it's Caltrans, but I'm very curious what they're doing about protecting against erosion on the, on the hope that we get some rain. It could matter, because that is right by the creek.
My guess is the same thing that begins and Quarry Park. Nothing, not enough money.
Yeah, well, I'd like to understand if they had a plan or not. Let me comment quickly on the report about the parking and the, where the trees were. I'm curious whether or not County Parks is doing any kind of work on preparing a specific plan for how they intend to use property differently. I know we've given some thought to a specific plan and what it might take to make one for the bypass lands here. So I'm curious what their plans there are. I say that more out of snark than actually thinking that they're going to prepare any real serious plans for that. But I do hope they do some plans. General Manager report.
No report.
Okay, with that, we are going to thank everyone for joining us. We are going to take a brief 5-minute recess, and then we're going to come back into closed session for an existing litigation item on Half Moon Bay sues all of its neighbors, some anticipated litigation, 2 different potential cases, and then if we take any action, we will report that out after a closed session, and that will be in our minutes as well. So thank you everyone for participating. Always great to see the community showing up and participating. And thank you for the opportunity to work for you. And
Thank you.